Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hockey Hub Podcast. So glad you could join us. Adam Pellerin, and happy to be joined by Dale Arnold for the first time here in the Hockey Hub Podcast. I know you've been hosting, but this is the first time that the two of us have got to do this pod together. So happy to be with you, my friend.
As I have always greeted you for years now, Pellerin! That's how we have always greeted each other. Good to see you again, Adam.
Yeah, great to see you. This isn't the first time that we've hosted a show together. I think we hosted a couple of shows together back in the day on television, different platform,
Yep.
You know, that antiquated platform right there, with one of the Nesson Daily or Nesson Sports Today shows. But this is the first time in a long time that we've hosted something together, which is a lot of fun. And Dale, you know, I think you're getting right back on the horse, man. You're right back in the swing of things. We're watching pre and post game coverage. It's like you never left, my friend.
I should have rethought the whole idea of 5 of my first 6 games being late starts on the Western Road swing. I got back to my daughter's house here in Plymouth at about 1:45 this morning. Got to bed about 2, and I'll get to do it again Thursday night. Well, when we finally finish up the road trip. I should have rethought this. You should have been doing these games, Pellerin.
Yeah, I know. When you came back into the mix, and I looked at the schedule. I said, "All right, this is good. This is okay with me. I'm cool with that." But
Yeah,
it's
I
been,
didn't
it's
think
been
it
tough
through.
staying up. It's been tough staying up, but the last couple of games, it's been worth it. Not so much the first 2 games of the road trip, where the Bruins got trounced by the Jets and then beat up by the Kraken. A nice bounce back win over the Vancouver Canucks on Saturday night. But the big question, Dale, just like the big question has been all year long with this Bruins team, how would they follow up a solid performance? And at first, didn't look great, especially in that first period. The Bruins were pretty fortunate to be scoreless after a period of play, but then the Flames, they take that 2-0 lead. They had a couple of 2-goal leads, but an incredible comeback by the Bruins. And now you can say a couple of solid wins by the Black and Gold on this road trip.
Yeah, you're down 2 Cobb a minute 21 in, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be one of those nights. But they survived it. They got through it, and you're thinking, okay, you'll be all right. And then all of a sudden, you give up that third goal, and after the Elias Lindholm goal, you finally get one. Then you give up that third goal. You're down 3-1 after 2, and again, you're thinking, all right, as good as the second period was, what's this going to be like in the third? But really, from the time they gave up the second goal and the timeout called by the head coach Joe Sacco, they were a completely different team. They dominated from that point, really all the way through, and including the overtime.
Yeah, they did. And, you know, a couple of things that stand out about the comeback. Obviously, the pair of multi-goal deficits being down 2-0, just like that, 2 goals, 27 seconds apart in that second period, and then being down 3-1. And that was really deflating, I thought, watching that game, Dale. Being down 3-1 after you'd played your butts off and you created all of these opportunities, and one opportunity in particular came right before that third goal for the Flames, where the Bruins had a 2-on-1 and Elias Lindholm, and you could see the frustration that he wasn't able to finish that, and then a tough bounce on the other end with a Zeri shot and a Lomberg deflection to make it 3-1. And so you're thinking at that point, man, that's going to be a tough hill to climb, going down 2 goals into the third.
With all due respect for our friends from the University of Maine and Orono, I was sitting there in the green room with the guys going, "Oh, not Lomborg, not him," because if you're a Bruins fan and the last couple of years with the Florida Panthers, all right, he's not your favorite guy probably, but you're down 3-1, and they just never stopped working. To their credit, they didn't give it up.
No, they didn't. And it was impressive too. And again, it's been a roller coaster ride this season. And there's no, I mean, look, I know you're just getting back into the mix hosting pre and post game shows, but I know you've been watching all year long. I know you've been paying attention to this team. And I know you've seen the third periods from this team this year. And it has not been pretty at times. The first 2 games of this road trip, man. you're in those first two games after two periods of play. You're down 3-1 after two in Winnipeg. You're down 2-1 after two in Seattle, where you really outplayed the Kraken for a long stretch there. And then you give up, a combined 8 goals over those two games in the third period. And so here you are, another situation like that where you're down 2 goals and you're thinking, man, this could go sideways in a hurry. But to their credit, they stuck with it and they got it to overtime. And and again, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jeremy Swayman making an outstanding save with the Bruins shorthanded. That was a big turning point right there, where that could have gone sideways as well.
As Brick always says, oftentimes it's situational saves. It's not necessarily the sparkling, spectacular save, although the shorthanded save was that. It's when you make them. What's the situation in the game? What happens if you give up that goal? And quite frankly, if Swayman gives up that shorthanded goal, the Bruins lose last night. There's no doubt in my mind they lose the game. But he makes the big save. They continue to battle. You know what I liked as much as anything else, too, Adam, was who got you the goals in the third period to tie things up? That's
Yeah.
what has been missing so much this year, is getting secondary scoring, getting Geeky and McLaughlin involved in the scoring in the third period to tie things up. That's a huge difference for this team.
Yeah, you love to see the secondary scoring come through at a critical time, but they had to go to the big dog in overtime, Dale. David Pastrnak, and the funny thing with that is he was clearly going off for a change, but he
He
stuck on
was
the
he
ice.
was gassed. Well, it was funny because he was out there for like it felt like 3 minutes. I think it was a 2 minute shift, and he freely admitted afterwards he was going off. He gave the puck to McAvoy and was going to go off, and McAvoy gave it right back and said, "No, no, 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 you take it." And it's almost as though he thought, "Well, what the heck? I might as well shoot. Maybe we'll get this thing over with." A classic Pastrnak shot off the pipe and in. Game over. Get on the bus. Get to the airport, and away you go.
Yeah, and again, you guys, I did stay up for the game and for the post game show for most of it, I'll admit, because it was getting pretty late at that point. But I did
Tell
see.
me about it.
I did see they didn't have enough pre-produced stuff at the back end of that show, so you could just put it on cruise control. You had to talk to whoever was producing that show last night, and be like, "Hey, we need some
Oh,
pre-produced
it
something."
it was on cruise control for a couple of people, but I wasn't one of them.
Fair enough. But I'll tell you though, I was, about to say that it was a great breakdown, and that's why we have the best in the business analyzing these hockey games on the desk and in the booth with Brick. But Razor and Billy just noticing David Pastrnak in his hand, right, opening up and closing, and that little movement throwing Dustin Wolf just a little bit off.
And Wolf is really good. As Andrew pointed out before the game, he's been good wherever he's been. And his numbers on home ice were the best in the National Hockey League going into last night's game. He was 8-1. His save percentage was like 949 at home. So this was going to be a tough guy to beat, period. And the Bruins found a way to get 4 past him, which was a pretty good accomplishment, particularly considering how he's played so far this year.
Yeah, and you feel so happy for Elias Lindholm, too, who scored the Bruins' first goal of the game, right? I mean, the fact that, he's coming back to Calgary, he's been struggling to score goals, and to do that against a team where, he had the best years of his career to this point, he felt really good for him, too.
Yeah, this whole season I think has been a bit of a struggle, and Andrew brought up a great point last night. Fans think that these are pros, and wherever they're playing doesn't really matter. They'll just show up at their new team and pick up right where they left off. And in both the case of Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, they've had to get used to some things here. Things are different here, and even on the goal that Lindholm scored, he kind of double clutched it a little bit, kind of muffed it a little bit, and if anything, that probably messed Dustin Wolf up a little. The 2-on-1 break that he had with Brad Marchand. I mean, I think if Elias Lindholm is playing the way he normally plays, he buries that thing, and
Yeah.
it's been a struggle for him, and by his own admission, it's been a struggle for him. But if you can get that guy going to the levels, approximating what you were expecting, he had a 42 goal season with Calgary. That's not going to happen. Again,
No.
I don't think he's a 42 goal scorer. He was playing on a line with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, and they were kind of freewheeling, going all over the place. But if you can get him to the level of a 20 to 25 goal scorer, a 60 point a year guy, maybe a 65 point a year guy. If you look on Hockey Reference, his average production over an 82 game schedule is about 55 points over his NHL career. So if you can get him an uptick from that, you get him to the 60 to 65 point range, you're going to feel very good about that signing in the offseason.
And I got to admit, I love his candor at intermission, calling the
Oh,
first period brutal. Wasn't that great?
as I pointed out at the end of the intermission, our first intermission was brutal too, and we were going to try to be better in the. I love and hockey players in general are pretty honest, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean, fans who don't understand the sport and the players think, oh well, you can't rip a guy, when he's not. Trust me, the guy's going to rip himself before you can rip him. You interview these guys rinkside all the time, or post game. They're going to tell you when they stink. They know when they stink. And I loved hearing Lindholm say they were brutal at the start of the game. That you're down 2-0 in the first 121. He's right, they were brutal. But to their credit, to his credit, they found a way to pull it back together and get back in the thing.
Yeah, if the first period was brutal, the comeback was brilliant.
Ooh.
And David Pastrnak with the overtime winner, talking to Judd Surratt's postgame.
David Pastrnak with a game winner tonight in overtime. Pasta, just how important was it on that shift in overtime that you took your time? You guys were patient. Walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, on that shift, started with Charlie having a great back check, and great stick on Kadri, and then honestly we got a possession. I was looking to change, and Charlie kind of dropped it to me, and both teams were there for a while, so I took my shot, and luckily it went in.
Pasta, take us back either to the second intermission or the start of the third period. What fueled the comeback?
Honestly, we were feeling we had a lot of opportunities in the second period, and we just couldn't score, and we gave them 2 goals in the second period on our own doing, and so we tried to clean it up and play the right way in the third, and huge comeback victory for our team.
Pasta, last thing, after the win in Vancouver, Charlie McAvoy called it massive considering the way the trip started. Try and put this one in perspective. How big was it?
We got ourselves back to 500 on this trip, and we get a chance to, finish 750 on really tough trip in Canada. So, recover and get ready for Edmonton.
Thanks, Pasta.
Thank you.
Imagine that, too,
Inside
Oh,
TV stuff, Adam. You'd know this better than anybody else. At the end of David's second answer, when he starts to go like this, he's had enough. And then just, one more thing. He was ready to go.
He was. And I remember last year we were in St. Louis, and the Bruins ended up winning in overtime. Charlie McAvoy had the game winner in OT. I believe it was McAvoy. Yeah, McAvoy had the game winner in OT. And so typically we interview players after the first intermission, but sometimes during the pre and post game, or during the first intermission, we'll have a guest. And so that interview will get pushed back to the second intermission, which I don't love doing, right? Especially in a close game. I'd rather interview the player during the first intermission, because when you're going into the third period, tensions are high, right? And at the time, the Bruins had lost 3 games in overtime and shootout on that road trip last year. And so McAvoy interviewed him during the second intermission. And I said, what do you guys need to do in the third to come out with a victory? And he said, we need to find a way to win. And he was basically walking off as he was answering the question. So I hear you on the readiness to finish the interview. But I was just starting to say, after we heard from David Pastrnak, and I want to talk about him in particular coming up, but you start this road trip, you lose to Winnipeg, right? So you come into the trip, you win 4 straight games, and you're looking at the opponents on the schedule, say, all right, not the strongest opponent, but you know what? It's 4 straight wins is 4 straight wins, and where this team has been at times this year, that's a very good thing heading into the trip. Then you lose that game in Winnipeg. Then you lose that game in Seattle. You win these last 2 games, and all of a sudden, you have a chance to have a winning road trip, which is pretty remarkable considering where it started. There's a little bit of resiliency in this group.
Yeah, you lose the first two games by a combined score of 13-2, as we pointed out earlier. You got outscored in the two third periods 8-0, and you're thinking, whoa, this thing is going downhill fast. Then best complete game effort of the season in Seattle for the win. A great come from behind effort in Calgary for the win. You find a way to beat the Edmonton Oilers. Tough task, don't get me wrong. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you find a way to pull that off. You come home with a 3-2 Western road trip. You're feeling very good about yourself.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the Oilers coming up. We'll also hear from Judd and Brick give their take on the road trip finale. But in terms of David Pastrnak, Dale, he's talked about it. Teams talked about it. Coaches talked about it. We've talked about it. The lack of goal scoring from Pastrnak, right? This is a guy that you expect 40, 50 goals every year now. And right now, on pace for about 30. He's averaging a point per game exactly. So, on pace for 82, obviously. He's had points in 7 of his last 8 games, but the goal scoring is starting to pick up a bit. And to see what we saw last night in overtime, you wonder if that's an indication that he's going to go on a heater.
Well, you look back at the one-timer power play goal in Seattle from his office that looked like a vintage David Pastrnak scoring play. You look at the game winner in overtime in the win against Calgary, paying off the post and in, and Dustin Wolf just beat clean from the top of the circle. Those are the sorts of goals that gifted goal scorers like David Pastrnak, like Alex Ovechkin, like Austin Matthews. Those are the kinds of goals those guys score. And if he starts to string those things together, I mean, as I've been watching him all season long, it almost felt like confidence was an issue for the guy. He was deferring too much. He was passing up shots that should have been in his wheelhouse. And I think it was because he didn't feel like he could score. He didn't feel the confidence that normally you'd think a guy like Pastrnak would be brimming with. As you start to see some of these goals, start to accumulate for him, you've got to think in his own head, it's like, oh, that's right, I can still do this. Give me the puck, I'll shoot it. And if that happens, then all of a sudden that 30-goal season becomes a 40-goal season or more, and now your offense looks completely different.
Yeah, and it could be a 40-goal season easily, right? I mean, you got 49 games left in the year. I mean, he could easily score 28 over the next 49. He's just that good. He's an elite goal scorer. But I was just going to say to your
point, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, but he's only human, right? He's only human. And so I think you were talking about the confidence factor, and you could see that. You could see that on the ice, and I think that you could see that with the entire team at points during the year. And I think that's partly why we've seen what we've seen at times this year, right? Where things have happened in bunches, right? The minor penalties taken in bunches, leading to multiple power play goals. We've seen that many times this year. We've seen the wheels come off the bus in the third period a lot this year. Some of that having to do with maybe some a lack of confidence. And so David Pastrnak, maybe a reflection of what we've seen at times from this Bruins team moving forward, but back-to-back wins like the ones they've had against Vancouver, who is a good team, who will be in the playoffs this year. And against the Calgary team that we've talked about has played very well at home, has played maybe better than some people thought this year in the mix, in the playoff conversation, at least early in the West. And against a very good goaltender, Dustin Wolf. Those 2 wins right there, after losing the way you did in the first 2 games of the trip, can be a confidence builder.
Bruins went into last night's game, and you know this anyway, but for our viewers who don't know, went into last night's game as the most penalized team in the National Hockey League. And they've been right there for a big chunk of this. And many of those penalties are just flat out, plainly undisciplined penalties. Stick infractions in the offensive zone, things like that. That double minor that Pastrnak took in the opening minute of the game in I think it was Winnipeg, the Winnipeg loss. Undisciplined penalties. Last night, the win that they had in Calgary, first game this entire season, they did not have a penalty. Not one. You start to clean that stuff up, Those are the little things, and Marchand's talked about this. You start to clean up things. Billy was talking about tape-to-tape passes. Last couple of games, you're seeing much crisper tape-to-tape passes. Then all of a sudden your pace picks up, your overall team speed picks up. All of these things, they're all little tiny pieces, but when you fit them all together, they become very big pieces, and all of a sudden you're a different hockey team.
And it's all connected, right? It's all connected. You have the puck more, you play with pace. If you're not in the box as much, there's more connectivity because you're not throwing guys out here, guys out there because you've been on the kill. So yeah, it's all connected, and it all came together for Joe Sacco and the Bruins last night in their 4-3 overtime win. Here is Andy Brickley talking one-on-one with the interim head coach.
Joe, strategic timeout, second period after the Kadri goal. What was the message, and did you get the desired response?
Well, we got it for a while. There was no doubt. I mean, they got that third goal towards the end of the second period, but I liked the response from the players. It was basically just start defending the slot better, start playing the way we're capable of. It was getting away from us, and good on the players to respond after that.
The first two games of this road trip, you had really good second periods, and the game was manageable in terms of getting points, but the third periods got away from you. What was different tonight?
Just will. I mean, I really loved our effort in the third period. There was no quit. The lines that were hopping over the bench, they were eager to get out there. They wanted to make a difference. We had a lot, 7 or 8 grade A chances there in the third period. So I was really proud of the way we responded in that third period. I loved our energy.
And lastly, I have to ask you about the overtime. Is that part of the strategy? Maybe take the puck back into the neutral zone in order to get Pastrnak back out there, one more opportunity for him?
Well, I think any time that you don't see anything happening in the offensive zone in the 3-on-3 situation, you can bring it back. It gives your forwards, even the defensemen, an opportunity to change if they have been out there for a little while there. So it's really just good old common hockey sense.
Wow, great win. Congratulations.
All right. Thanks, Brick.
I believe Nikita Zadorov after the game, Dale, had said part of the strategy in overtime is get the puck to 88 or 63.
That's good strategy, by the way. The other thing about last night, you're down 2-0, and Sacco calls the timeout. The thing that jumped out at all three of us as we were sitting watching it, there was no panic at all. He wasn't ranting and raving and gesturing and flinging stuff around. It was very matter of fact. It was very calm. And I think Joe's been really good in that regard here, keeping things positive, keeping things, on an up note. I've been very impressed with how he's handled this team more in times of adversity than in times of plenty. I mean, everybody, you and I can be a good coach if the team's playing great. It's when they're not playing great that matters. And I think he's handled things very well.
Yeah, I would agree. It is a calm, cool, and collected demeanor that Joe Sacco has. And I wonder, Dale, if a lot of that just has to do with the fact that, he's been in Boston for 10 years. I mean, he has a high comfort level with this group. And I also, Brick and I talked a little bit about this. I mean, he's got 20 years of coaching experience, right? And you look, and I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of the second head coaching jobs, historically, right? But if you go back to Bruce Cassidy, right? I mean, he was a head coach in Washington. He was young. He comes to the Bruins organization. He's coaching down in Providence, becomes an assistant, and then he takes over the reins and has a great deal of success. I bet more often than not, the second time around, there's a lot more success than failure.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And, in Cassidy's case, he went 10 years before he got another kick at the can, and he wondered if he was going to get one. Joe Sacco, from the time he was the head coach in Colorado until the time he was named the interim head coach here, had a similar time frame. But he's been here. I mean, he was here in the Peter Chiarelli year. At the end of the Chiarelli regime, and he's been here through Claude Julien and Bruce Cassidy and Jim Montgomery. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge for Joe. There's a lot of comfort from the player's perspective. They know him. He knows them. He knows what buttons to push because he's been around here watching those buttons being pushed for a long time. I'm a big fan of people getting a second opportunity, and it worked great for Cassidy so far. knock wood. It looks to be going very well for Joe Sacco, and I couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah, 9-4-0 under Joe Sacco so far. And I was just thinking of other examples just locally, right? I mean, outside of hockey, Bill Belichick as a head coach having success, in New England his second time around. Terry Francona, right? In Philly, and then comes to Boston and has this, so I mean, that happens. It happens in all sports, where you get that coaching experience in one place and then it pays off in the second job. All right. You're watching the Hockey Hub, and if you like what you hear, then make sure to like and subscribe to the show. Hockey Hub can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever else podcasts are found. Adam Pellerin, Dale Arnold here with you, episode number 21. Dale, I didn't do it off the top. I've been doing this on the Hockey Hub where I like to say, episode 21. It's the Andrew Ferentz episode, or
Nice.
it could be the Teddy Donato episode. I like to go to the memory banks to see if I can remember jersey numbers. Any 21s in Bruins history come to mind? Not to put you on the spot.
Those were two good ones. And by the way, Teddy's kid Ryan scored the game winner for Chicago in the third period last night. Ryan Donato's having a great year for the Chicago Blackhawks. They were down 2-0 going into the third.
I was just going to say, you talking about Bruins Midwest, the Blackhawks?
Yeah, that is pretty much Foligno and Maroon and Taylor Hall, and I mean, it's like one guy after another. But 21's you hit two good ones with those.
Yeah. I just remember JVR last year. JVR was a 21, and I think Garnet Hathaway was a 21. I'm not going to look, but those are recent memories. But then before that, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I like to do that before the show. Since it's the first time that we've done the show together, I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave that out because I look forward to it. But I'm going to run out. The problem is, Dale, once we get to episode 96. I'll have to come up with a new gig because there's one player in Bruins history that's worn 95. It was the highest number in Bruins history, and it was only for one game. It was Vinny Lettieri, who's playing down in Providence. And so I'm going to be in trouble. I don't know what I'm going to do, after episode number 95. If you have any ideas, please let me know, okay?
Well, you've got Oliver Wahlstrom now with a 71 you can add to your list, too.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. With Taylor Hall, I can do that.
Yeah.
271. There we go. Okay. All right, good. All right, well, that's a good 50 episodes away, so I'll put that in the memory bank. Like I was talking about earlier, we have 49 games left in the season, and you're wondering, as we sit in our chairs watching these games on TV or in the studio, wondering if, all right, is this when the Bruins start to put something together? And the captain, Brad Marchand, was asked about momentum following the win over the Flames.
I don't like really looking at one game and thinking it's going to have any impact on the next game because it doesn't. I think you feel good after you have a win, but that can also be dangerous. I think it's an opportunity for us every day to reset and look at the opportunity ahead of us, be prepared for that next game. Whether you win or lose, it has no impact on how you're going to play the next game unless you let it. I think that the last few days have been a really good opportunity for us to bond as a group, which is extremely important this time of year and with some of the things we've been through as a team. So, it's another opportunity to come together as a team and we have to reset again after this one and be prepared for the next one. It's going to be the toughest one of the trip and we want to make sure we have a good game, but I don't think we're really getting caught up on how we play a one game. That's going to dictate the play of another game and carry momentum. It's all about how we prepare for each day in practice and prepare for the games. And we've done a better job of that lately.
Spoken like a true captain, Dale.
Oh, and he hit the nail on the head. You're coming off the 5-1 win in Seattle. I said your best complete game effort of the entire season. And the next game, you're down 2-0 in the first minute and 21 of the momentum. To me, is such an ethereal idea. It ebbs and flows, and it's almost entirely dependent on the bounce of a puck or a save that goes off the knob of your stick. Teams certainly do get hot and they play well, but it's not because of momentum. It's because they take care of the details, and they take care of the little things that add up to the difference between winning and losing. And Brad was exactly right. If anything, you win 5-1 in Seattle and you're feeling really good about yourself, and the next thing you know, maybe you don't put the same effort in practice going into the Calgary game. Maybe you are getting a little carried away with your press clippings, to borrow an old cliche. So I've never been a fan of this. Oh, well, the momentum. Momentum means you play well. And you play well when you pay attention to detail. And, it was a great come from behind win against Calgary. None of that matters when you take to the ice in Edmonton. None of it. And, Brad's been around the game long enough. You've been around the game long enough to know, momentum really is how good your next shift is.
I don't think we were talking about the Bruins 4-game win streak after the 8-1 loss to the Jets, were we?
Not so much, no.
Yeah, we were talking about the fact that, well, hey, like they've won 4 of 5, right? No, that's not what the conversation was. The conversation was about the latest, with the Bruins, and that's exactly what Brad Marchand is talking about right there. For more on the Bruins and the biggest trending news in the sports world, check out Boston Has Entered the Chat. It's hosted by George Bellecci and Travis Thomas, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and wherever else podcasts are found. So the Bruins made an interesting waiver claim on Saturday during their road trip. Oliver Wahlstrom. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, Dale. There's a video of him that was pretty popular when he was a kid, scoring a goal on TD Garden Ice. Have you seen this?
What's really funny is that the goal he scored in the next mini one-on-one game was better than that one. That's the one that went viral. That's the one that everybody's been talking about. Just if you want to touch Andrew Raycroft off, show him that video, because he pictures kids, youth hockey players all around New England trying to do that. But the one he scored after that, where he literally carried the puck on his stick all the way in and scored. Look, when you're 9 years old, you can be creative when you're playing against another 9-year-old goaltender who's probably going to cap his hockey career at the age of 12. But it was great. Everybody loves watching it. It was a lot of fun. You get the sense listening to him. He was speaking in Calgary the day before. He's kind of sick of talking about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, he's sick and tired of people talking about what he did, 15 years ago when he was 9 years old. But to me, this was a pretty easy decision for Don Sweeney. Wahlstrom has a 1-year, $1 million cap hit. If he's healthy and if he's playing the way he can play, he's got good offensive abilities. Something this team has needed is some scoring punch, and he's got that ability. Now, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to talk real here. If things don't work out, you waive him. You don't want to do that. I'm not counting on that happening. I'm not rooting for that to happen. I'm saying it's kind of a no-lose situation for Don Sweeney, and I think it was a good move. Now the question becomes, how do you use him? You don't bring Oliver Wahlstrom in my opinion, and put him in a fourth line checker role. This guy's got some offensive abilities. I think he's got to play in your top 9. Second or third line in some way, shape, or form. Play the right wing on one of those two combinations, and hopefully, when he's been healthy, he's been a pretty good scorer. He could score goals. He had some health issues there, and things kind of dropped off for him from a scoring perspective after the injury, but you really don't have much to lose here. I like the move by Sweeney. You bring him in. I don't know if he's going to make his debut against Edmonton. You know how coaches are. The Bruins are coming off back-to-back wins. Joe Sacco may be saying, no. We're just going to leave things just the way they are. Thank you very much. So you'll see him. If it's not Thursday in Edmonton, it'll be Saturday at home. You'll see him, and Bruins fans will get a chance to see him soon, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Low risk, high reward situation with Wahlstrom. Great shot. You could see him maybe on the flank on the power play. Second unit type of thing. We'll see if that plays out. And, it's going to be interesting to see how the roster shakes out as well, because you have Mark McLaughlin, who, by the way, and I know you guys have mentioned that, went to BC together. They were roommates together at BC, he and Wahlstrom. He has now got goals in back-to-back games, scored the game-tying goal, so he's playing well in the fourth-line role. There's still Tyler Johnson in the mix. He hasn't played in a while. You sort of wonder what his future is with the Bruins. And, there's some things to figure out. I'm glad it's not my job. But I am anxious or interested, I should say, to see how it plays out. But, getting back to McLaughlin for a second quickly, you feel really good for him, right? You feel good for him. He's been up and down since he's become a pro. Got a little taste of the NHL in his first year pro. Been down in Providence, and now getting another opportunity and making the most of it.
He's been a good pro, too. He's been a good person within this organization. He goes down there in Providence, and it has a bit of a leadership role there as well, and has played very effectively there. Andrew said a couple of games ago, before he even scored in the game against Seattle, he said he's got a habit of kind of scoring in bunches. When they come, they kind of, pile up a little bit. He gets the one that deflects off the defenseman and goes in Seattle. The goal he scored against Calgary was just flat out work and effort. Go to the dirty areas, go to the net, refuse to be denied, get the second chance, slide it by Dustin Wolf. He's a good, solid professional. I mentioned with Billy and Andrew, you could see how happy his teammates were for him as well. Not just because he scored a goal for your team. You're always happy when a teammate scores, but they know that this guy's worked hard, and this guy is trying to make the most of his opportunities. He's a hard guy to not root for.
Yeah, I agree. Crashing the net, doing that type of thing we've seen it with the fourth line this year, right? We talked about that fourth line for the Bruins. Now Kastelik's obviously been, bumped up to the third line, but you had Kastelic, Beecher, and Koepke doing that kind of work, and they were the best line for the Bruins for a while, which sort of speaks to some of the offensive struggles that the Bruins had and still are sort of working through. But that type of play from a fourth line guy is invaluable, and Mark McLaughlin has certainly shown that. So next up for the Bruins, as we mentioned, is a date with the Edmonton Oilers, the high-flying Edmonton Oilers, led by Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. We'll talk about that coming up, but first let's get some thoughts from Judd Surratt and Andy Brickley.
Rick, the Bruins are going to end this long 5-game road trip out to Western Canada on Thursday against the Edmonton Oilers, and they're going to head there with some momentum.
Yeah, 2 impressive wins back-to-back. I know there was time in between in 2 different cities, obviously, and 2 very different hockey games. Complete game performance against Vancouver. You liked everything that they did, their discipline, their details. They got behind in Calgary, and earlier in the trip when they got behind, going into third periods, it did not end well, but their will to win against the Flames. And the fact that they put up 9 goals total in those 2 games, it makes you feel good about an offense that might have been stuck in neutral. But again, Judd, what has made the difference for this team in this 9-4 run has been their defense, how they play without the puck, and they're going to need that against the high-powered offense of the Edmonton Oilers.
No question about it, because when you talk about the Oilers, how do you deal with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid?
You just try to contain. You do the best you can. You try to take away middle ice. You try to stay out of the penalty box. I know their power play numbers aren't great, but they're so dangerous. And they're getting better play from some of their secondary players. A guy like Darnell Nurse, he stepped up his game. They're getting more from Hyman, who's a tremendous goal scorer a year ago. He's starting to find the range. They have enough to really be hard to handle. But I think Boston is very happy what they've done in the last 2 games.
And the core players for the Bruins, they typically rise to the occasion against Edmonton.
Yeah, they do. They do. And that'll be the challenge, to get those road trip to 2-2 when it didn't look good. You didn't feel good after the Seattle game. You're 0-2. You're going into Vancouver. You don't know what you're going to get. But what the Bruins have done as a team is been able to come together, lean on one another, make plays when plays matter at critical points in the hockey game, and I think that has really allowed them to be in the position that they're in the frame of mind that they're in.
Bruins trying to end this trip in a flourish.
And it would be a flourish, right? To beat the Oilers, to close out the trip after the way this trip started, which is what we talked about close to the top of the hockey hub, would be just I mean, that would be the icing on a couple of great wins in Vancouver and Calgary to go into Edmonton and finish off that trip and come home with a 3-2 road trip.
Couple of things about the Edmonton Oilers. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. Bruins are 7-3. So the Oilers are, as Brick and Judd said, playing very well. I'll tell you something that surprised me when I looked at it. 8 teams in the National Hockey League have scored more goals than the Edmonton Oilers. I mean,
Yeah.
you think of McDavid and Draisaitl and all those guys, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is, how are you going to stop these guys? And they're really good. Don't misunderstand me. But they've got 102 goals this year as a team, and as I
Yep.
said, 8 teams in the National Hockey League have scored more than they have. But they're good. They're strong. They've got a great power play. The Bruins would be well advised to play the same way they did in Calgary. In other words, don't take any minor penalties, stay out of the box, and they've got to just find a way to piece together some enough offense. When the Bruins are successful, it always starts with defensive play. And when they play well defensively, everything else follows. Well, they better play well defensively in Edmonton because that's a really good team that can make you look bad if you give them a chance.
Yeah, the Bruins keep playing teams that are on the heels of playing the Panthers too, right? Because the Flames had beat the Panthers 3-0. Vancouver had shut out the Panthers as well. Panthers beat the Oilers 6-5, which was a pretty wild game in Edmonton. And so the Bruins will once again face a team that's just faced the Florida Panthers. And just looking, the recent history between these two teams, have been close games. Last 5 games have been decided by a goal, 2 of them in overtime. Both teams split on each other's home ice. The Bruins, though, they're 5-0-1 in their last 6 games in Edmonton, including the 6-5 overtime win last year, which was on national TV. It was a pretty wild game. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the Bruins deal with Leon Draisaitl, 23 goals, 24 assists, Connor McDavid right behind him statistically. I mean, this is as good as it gets in terms of a 1-2 punch in the NHL, Dale.
It's such a treat for hockey fans back in Boston to see Connor McDavid. You get to see him, on Thursday night. You get to see him at the TD Garden on January 7th. The opportunity. I always felt in those years when they were messing with schedules and how they were going to play, you've got to be able to see every single team in the league in every arena in the league. Connor McDavid won't necessarily be playing, won't necessarily be healthy, but you've got to be able to have the Edmonton Oilers coming to town with him. Reaches the 1,000-goal plateau, the 4th fastest in NHL history. Did that a week or so ago. My favorite stat of all time, Adam, is this one, though, and I know we're pressed for time here. Connor McDavid reaches it in the 4th fastest number of games in NHL history. Wayne Gretzky reached 1,000 points in the fastest time in NHL history, and the 2nd fastest time in NHL history. Think about that. He reached 1,000 points. Unbelievable. Nobody's ever done it before. Then he did it again to get to the 2,000-point plateau. So he's got the 1st and 2nd fastest runs to 1,000 points in NHL history.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. That's a good way to close things out, Dale, with you here on the Hockey Hub as we segue to some Boston Fleets conversation. But Dale, this was a good time. Our first Hockey Hub together. I hope we get to do it again, my friend.
I'll do it anytime, Adam. Good to talk hockey with you.
All right. Dale Arnold joining us here on the Hockey Hub podcast. From Simone Biles to Caitlin Clark to all the top stories in sports, we got you covered on NESN's Women in Sports podcast. Respect Her Game. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And look at that. It's magic. Natalie Noury just appears magically into our frame. The rinkside reporter for the Boston Fleet joining us. First off, congratulations. All right, so full disclosure, we had a feeling this was going to happen, but it wasn't official. So you've been on the Hockey Hub. We couldn't talk about it then, but now we can talk about it, obviously. You're the Boston Fleet rinkside reporter on NESN. congratulations.
Thank you, Adam. No, I appreciate that. And it's funny because just like a few weeks ago, we were talking about this. Like, I think it's going to happen. Didn't really know for sure. Hadn't received the hard copy paperwork yet, but the John Hancock has been signed. I'm in. So yes, I'm based in Boston. It's great to cover the Fleet. I also get to cover the rest of the league as well. So it's been super fun, and you know, I'm used to covering college hockey. You were naming some Boston College players and everything with Dale Arnold before, but now I'm entering this new ballpark, I guess, new arena of pro hockey. The land it's a promised land, and it's great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. The inaugural season last year was a lot of fun. It was PWHL Boston. Now they got a team name and some sick uniforms.
Yeah, those are sick.
I was watching highlights last night of their win over the Ottawa Charge, and I was thinking, man, those things are cool. So we'll start there. Big win over Ottawa last night. What was the takeaway from that?
Yeah, you know what? It was a good win. And what's funny about their schedule is the Boston Fleet had a 10-day break for the international break, and then they played a game last night, and they go into another 10-day break for the holiday break. So it's a little bit of a weird schedule, but they put together a win back on December 8th, and that was a nice win, a strong win. They scored 4 goals, which I think only happened for that team twice last season, and they were the team that went to the Walter Cup Championship. So it's great to see them putting a win together and bringing that into last night's game. Ottawa is a team that has struggled to kind of score some goals, but Boston was looking for some more depth too, and they went from 4 different goal scorers to 7 just in last night's game, and really great to see some of the rookies get on the board. You're really starting to see chemistry play out, and it's exciting. You watch the pace, and it's first of all, it's funny to see like 23-year-olds playing on the same line as 35-year-olds, which again, I'm used to college hockey, so it's so fun to watch the pace and the way that people are conserving their energy and using it in different situations. But yeah, really good win last night. You're just starting to see some things click for the Fleet, which is super promising.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the young players this year. Before I get to that, though, let's talk about last year. You know, you mentioned getting the Walter Cup finals and, getting that close. What are the early differences between last year's team and this year's team?
I think initially it's just a year where expectations are a little more distinct. And, last year, it was a weird year. It was a longer preseason for them last season, where the summer was a little bit, up in the air. They were trying to figure out this new league and execute it. And coming in last year, it was just like, okay, this is year one. How do we hit the ground running? It was trying to play hockey, which is what they do, but also trying to play hockey through a little bit of adversity. This year, it was a longer off season, shorter preseason, a draft to bring in new rookies, and they hit the ground running. I think year 2 is just a year where the expectations were laid out for them. So, not so much difference within the team. Of course, personnel changes a little bit, but I think just the overall feeling coming into this season just gave them a little more confidence, knowing they've done it once. I think the rookies came in feeling a little more confident, knowing that it had been done for a season. So I think that was the biggest difference, just coming into a season where things were a little more certain.
One of those rookies, Shea Maloney, scoring her first PWHL goal in the win over the Charge. You have Hannah Bilka as well, first-round selection of the Fleet. What have you seen from those two?
Yeah, Hannah Bilka, she's so much fun to watch, and she's one of the ones I was talking about. She's playing on a line with Hilary Knight, and a cool story there is just, Hannah Bilka grew up watching Hilary Knight when she was 12 or 13 at a hockey camp. Hilary Knight had just won, I think, the silver medal in Sochi, the Olympics, so Hilary Knight came to talk to the team. Hannah Bilka, the 12-year-old, took a selfie with her afterwards, and then they proceeded to play on the same line together for Team USA, and now in the Pro League as well. So it's really cool to see these stories come full circle. But Hannah Bilka, she really, really brings a ton of speed. And Courtney Kessel has talked about her speed, just saying it looks like it allows her to kind of float around the ice. She's the type of fast player where defenders are kind of attracted to her. They go to cover her, and Hilary Knight takes advantage of that, finds the soft spots on the ice to really kind of put some chances home. But I think the speed that you see from Hannah Bilka is really next level, and it's a lot of fun. It brings a ton of pace to the game. It brings a ton of pace to the line. And she's a ton of fun. But you mentioned Shea Maloney as well. It was great to see her score her first goal. I got to do an interview with her right after that. And of course, very humble. She gives all the praise to her line mates, but she's one of those players that has the proper, physical attributes to really body herself into these situations and the physicality to finish chances. And that's exactly what she did to score that goal. But she was so happy, and it was great to see her line mate, Sophie Shirley. She ran over, grabbed the puck for her right after the goal was scored. But great to see some rookies get on the board, and nice for the future of the Fleet, too, this season.
In terms of between the pipes, Aerin Frankel, former Northeastern star, seems to be picking up where she left off.
Yeah, it's great because you see throughout the arena they have just posters and signs that say brick wall, and that's exactly what she is. She's a brick wall, and she's stoic, and it's so fun to watch her. It's like her teammates have said she plays without a heartbeat, which is so true because, a player will get one or two past her, but she only gets stronger with each save. I feel like her past consecutive third periods, she's just gotten stronger. She's killing penalties like a pro, and it's just so much fun to watch her. She's 5'5", so she's taking a couple adjustments into her game where she's trying to stay farther up in her crease for even half a second longer so that the shooter doesn't have as much to shoot at. But the saves that she makes, the way she comes in clutch for this team, it's no doubt in my brain that she is one of the best goaltenders that I've ever seen play, and it's so much fun to be able to cover her.
That's the only thing so far, right, in the 2-2 start that Coach Kessel probably wants to see cleaned up a little bit, of taking too many penalties, 18 in the 4 games.
Yeah, and what's funny this year is they really wanted to promote some more goal scoring, especially on the power play. So they introduced the no escape rule. So when a player takes a penalty, the remaining players on the ice have to start the penalty kill. So these are players that might not have traditionally been on the PK, but you might have 2 forwards, 2 defenders out there who aren't penalty killers. So the importance of winning these faceoffs, the importance of practicing the PK and going over video is just so much more relevant this year because of this no escape rule. But Boston's done a pretty nice job with it, and they win the faceoff, they clear the puck, and they get their penalty killers out there right away. So I have to say, from the penalty kills that I've seen, you can't speak too soon, but it is one of those situations where you're like, okay, Aerin Frankel's back there. We know they've got that, but at the same time, the faceoffs, the practice, the penalty killing that some of these players are having to be introduced to, you're seeing that practice pay off. So that's kind of been a cool aspect to the game this season.
That's what they say, right? The goaltender is the best penalty killer, and that is an interesting twist this year for sure, the PWHL. So hopefully Fleet can start taking fewer penalties. It kind of reminds me of what we've said about the Bruins this year as well. But next time the Fleet are in action, December 27th, it's Toronto Scepters on Nesson. We'll look forward to that. Look forward to seeing your coverage as well for the Fleet. We thank you for joining us on the Hockey Up podcast, Natalie. Appreciate it.
Always, Adam. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, that'll wrap things up for episode number 21. Thanks to Dale Arnold once again. I'm Adam Pellerin. Thanks, Natalie. We'll see you next time.